member, I am a labor activist, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight. I am also happy to welcome our panelists here. So a round of applause for everyone. Really looking forward to having some good conversations. So like I said, my name is Lauren. I am a queer woman. I am a union staff worker and a member of my union as a rank and file worker as well. And I'm really happy to be here this evening with you all at New Freeway Hall. So happy Pride, everyone. Yay! Really happy to celebrate Pride, but also we say this, Stonewall was a riot and now we need a revolution. Yeah. So thinking about Pride and thinking about this celebration, what we're thinking about is we're thinking of Stonewall and we're thinking of all of the queer liberation activists who have come before us. And understanding that they were fighting repressive forces, similar to what we're fighting now. We're seeing that there is a lot of hateful and divisive language and scapegoating of queer folks, erasure of queer folks, and radical women and FSP have a long history in fighting fascism and fighting the far right that we're continuing today. I would also like to shout out on our live stream our LA folks who are joining us. So welcome to everyone online. And would like to get us started this evening by reading an excerpt from a poem. So this poem is from this pamphlet. It's called Yellow Woman Speaks by Miro. Miro Wu is an FSP member from the Bay Area and has been a queer woman of color who has been fighting some of these same forces for some time. And these are some words that she had to share from her poem, Jelly Bean. A thousandfold of gender expressions, a wild flourishing of sexualities. The nuclear family unit had disappeared because everyone had everything collectively. Males and females were equal. Children were no longer blue and pink incipient workers. It didn't matter if you were mannish or womanish. Why, you could be 2 spirits, 3 spirits, 4, fluid, changing by choice or desire, merging, interpenetration of sexualities and genders for some, clearly male and female for others. So many expressions and speakings out we no longer laughed at, but admired. And that was a really great poem. So thank you, Gina, for recommending that. Really great to think about this world of no longer laughing at, but admiration, kind of having that in our sights as we're fighting for revolution. So, to want to also move us through a couple of announcements. Unfortunately, we've learned that the U.S. has launched airstrikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. So obviously this is very breaking news, very tragic news to hear about. We're anticipating there will likely be some anti-war actions in coming days. So for folks who are interested in participating in these anti-war actions, actually if you want to just raise your hand, we'd be happy to, I don't know if someone, Helen? Okay.
Keep your hands up.
Yeah, keep your hands up for a moment, and we will make sure to talk with you so that you can be involved in our contingent of whatever actions. As you all are sitting around with your hands in the air, I am also going to welcome Christina is here somewhere, but I don't see. Okay, Christina in the back. Christina will be helping out with our bookstore this evening, and also If you would like a copy or a subscription to our newspaper, The Freedom Socialist, please talk to Christina. Christina will be more than happy to get you set up with that subscription. And also, I don't know if you've seen yet, Mackenzie and Sarah have been working on our raffle. So we have a raffle table here in the back with a couple of really great prizes. We got a t-shirt, we got some kind of cool sticker pack, and we have an out-of-print book, Lesbian Images. Please purchase your raffle tickets. We will draw those at the end, and then you can talk with Mackenzie or Sarah about that. Also, a couple of other announcements before we get into things. We have at the hall on Monday evenings a study group with radical women called Heroines of Resistance, Women as Anti-Fascist Militants. Again, another super topical topic. So please, I think we have some flyers at the front of this. You can also chat with like Gina or Belle or a lot of us if you would like some more information about this, but it's Monday nights here at 6:30 p.m. And then also another flyer we have available and a couple of events that we have coming up. We are doing a summer movie series called Stand Up, Fight Back. So we're going to have a series of 3 films that we'll be playing here at the hall on Friday evenings. The first one will be Friday, July 11th, then Friday, July 18th, and one Friday, August 8th. All of those will be at 7 p.m. And the theme is films that inspire resistance and show us what's possible. So as we'll be talking tonight about our fight back against this political repression, these films will be on that theme of coming together and resisting fascism. So, that being said, really excited to introduce our speakers for this evening. The format of how we're going to dive into this discussion tonight is first I'll introduce our panelists one by one, and they will come up and they will give a presentation about who they are and the work that they're doing in their unions. And then we will have a little pause to welcome some closing comments or some closing of that portion of the evening, and then we'll move on to our discussion here as our folks in LA will move on to discussion there. So let's move into hearing from our speakers. We will get started today. Join me in welcoming Tori Westman. Journey level electrician. They're the chair of IBEW 46 Women's Committee, and they are dedicated to strengthening union representation for LGBTQ+ workers. Welcome, Tori.
Thank you. Happy Pride, comrades.
Happy Pride.
Thank you for having me. Tori Westman, I also go by TT, chair of IBEW Local 46 Women's Committee, also involved in Electricians for Palestine and some other rank and file led initiatives in Local 46. I'm queer, and I know that the word queer has become shorthand for LGBTQIA. But for me, it expresses my relationship with gender, which is that I feel I experience the world as a woman, but I don't have a hold tight to gender binaries. I also use the word queer to connect me to the fight for liberation rather than just rights. And it's a callback to Stonewall, the Compton cafeteria riots led by trans and gender non-conforming queers fighting against police violence, against state violence. And there are just so many ways to be a woman, a man. There's so many other genders out there, and seeing that can be really beautiful and liberating. And I guess it can also be scary for some folks, right? Because if you start questioning these rigid gender binaries, then you might start questioning the concept of nations and borders and federalism. You might start questioning prisons and policing and the structure of families, and also this whole myth of the middle class. So we might start looking around and realize that our current systems are not working and we need to build something new. So these rigid binaries are an effective tool for controlling people. You know, if there's this strict set of rules to be a man or to be a woman, that can in some ways comfort some people. You know, especially if people are being told that if you follow these rules, then you're going to earn something, such as economic prosperity, or respect, or God's love. And there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. But I think that's part of the reasons why the far right, and also being honest, like a lot of run-of-the-mill Democrats and Republicans, work to uphold this illusion of rigid gender roles. I don't have time to touch on all the ways that these binaries are harmful to everyone. And I won't have time to talk about, how that the framework for how to be a man and how to be a woman promoted by the far right is really a framework for what it means to be a white man and to be a white woman. But touching on a few, if part of your definition of being a woman is you need to be a stay-at-home mom or a housewife, then good luck in this economic environment. Like, very few people are going to be able to do that. Most women are going to have to work outside the home. Most women are going to be, put into female-coded jobs that are paid less. And if you do work in a male-dominated field, there's lots of barriers to get in there, and you're also going to face harassment and discrimination. Right. So, if you follow your gender binary, you're not doing well economically. If you step out of it, you're still not doing well economically. And so I actually work in the building trades. So most of my coworkers are cis white dudes. In fact, most, 4% of building trades are women. Things are getting a little bit better. The racial demographics are getting still a little bit better, but it's still predominantly white cis men. And not all of them, but I do see many of my union brothers struggling to follow these strict gender binaries. Like, they're working so hard to be this good breadwinner, to be this good man, to provide for their family. And then you hear their frustrations, that they're doing all this work and it's not paying off. Because at this moment in time, about one-sixth of my local is out of work. And despite the fact that we are building Seattle, most of us actually can't afford to live in Seattle. So I think that a lot of this messaging around the middle class that's been pushed even by our own unions has really allowed for these kind of economic frustrations, identity fears, and it's really given space for the far right to kind of swoop in with their own messaging. And their messaging is divisive. The far right is attacking literal children. They're attacking trans kids because they are bullies, and they know that trans kids have very little economic power, or any kind of power at all. But they're also using trans kids as a way to really bring about gender identity fears, that if you are stepping outside of this, then you are going to be facing real repercussions. And they're also using it as a way to divide the working class. Like, here in Washington, Brian Haywood is a multi-millionaire who's going to be working on 2 anti-trans initiatives. Does Brian Haywood actually hate trans people? It is possible. Or he knows that the more time we spend talking about trans people, the less time we're talking about how there's the ability for there to be multi-millionaires. Yeah. And I want to be clear that unions need to fight to make sure that trans kids are able to grow up to become trans adults. And unions need to fight against ICE. And I wish this messaging was as simple as trans people are workers, and immigrants are workers, and it's the right thing to do. And for some people it is, right? We have some really great organizers in Local 46 that I'm a part of. But I think that if we really want to have long-term gains against the far right, we need to increase union membership, increase worker power, and really get workers to buy into believing that they have a real material interest in fighting for trans people and immigrants. And I'm not going to be honest, or I am going to be honest, I'm not completely sure how to do that. And But one of the things that I am doing is that I am running on a rank and file solidarity slate with 6 other rank and file workers in my union for the IBEW convention delegation. Some of us are queer, some of us are not, but our platform is based on union democracy, strong contracts for all, and fighting back against ICE and attacks on trans members. And we've been getting some pushback on this, and that was to be expected. We've used our platform to actually put surveys out to the membership and get people to share what they care about. And there's this pretty clear division. There's folks who are like, yes, we love this, keep fighting for this. And other people who are like, this woke agenda is going to destroy our unions. So we are trying to make a connection between solidarity and economic security for all of us. And we realize we're not going to get every single person on board, but we do need to get enough people on board to be pushing forward and to make sure those people who are really against us don't get into leadership positions. So there's some things that you can do that are pretty basic things that you could do to support LGBTQ workers. IBEW Local 46 has a table at Trans Pride and a float for the Seattle Pride Parade. Check your healthcare insurance to make sure it covers the full spectrum of gender-affirming care, and if it doesn't, work to include it. Or even better yet, get your union to be supporting healthcare for all. Universal healthcare, once again, making the connection between uplifting all workers and also the most marginalized. Stronger contract language to protect marginalized workers, lobbying for trans people, all the typical things unions can do. But I also think we really need to get back to our working class roots, where unions were not afraid to take direct action, and members need to show up to protest. SEIU members showed up for Llewellyn Dixon when she was at the Northwest Detention Center, and that did have an impact on getting her released. It's keeping it in the media, it's really changing the tone of what labor can and cannot do, and that we aren't afraid to actually put our bodies on the line for our members. And we need to expand that message that's not just union members, but all workers that we need to be fighting for. So we have a group called Electricians for Palestine. It's a group that's not recognized by IBEW that allows us to do a little bit more vetting and getting members in. And it's been moved to doing a lot of strategizing around protesting. Many of our members are queer, Electricians for Palestine. And so we've been using this as a way to strategize protest, rather it's just us showing up, just happen to be in union gear, but also trying to find a way to push our union to be endorsing different protests and actions, such as the April 5th action. That's been a while. It's been 10 years since then. But also trying to find a way to get our hall to actually commit to bailing us out of jail if one of us get arrested. Unions do have the financial support to do so, and I think that does send a stronger message that they would be willing to be there for us if we get picked up. So there is a lot of work to be done, and it's easy to feel burnout. Earlier this year, we lost a sister named Vicki Carson. She was a strong supporter for LGBTQ rights in our union. She was actually one of the people who helped found the women's committee in my local. The women's committee in my local is actually very queer. And I didn't know her terribly well, but I know that her actions did create space for me in my local. And so carrying her message with me, and also all the many other members who have done so much work before me, probably keeps me energized going forward. And then I think about my queers in my union right now, who I hope that know that I love them, and that I hope that I represent them well, and that it's not me doing this, but it's really all of us working together to try to make things better for queer people right now. We can't wait for things to get better in the future. We need to be making sure we're saving each other at this time. And also for future trades queers, really trying to make sure that they aren't going through some of the same things that many of our members are going through right now. So thank you, happy Pride. I have a few flyers for an ICE protest next week because I'm queer as in fuck ICE. So if you're interested, please go ahead and grab them. Thank you.
will welcome up Steve Johnson. Steve is a non-binary cable technician and shop steward with the Communication Workers of America Local 7800, and also an activist with Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. Welcome, Steve.
Can you hear me okay? How about that? Sorry. I'm usually used to be a little bit more in the background, helping out behind the scenes than standing up and speaking. So I appreciate the chance to be able to share my story. Like was said, I'm a non-binary person. I'm a cable technician, which, no, that's not cable TV. This is, I work for CenturyLink Lumen. They have the name on the stadium, but my job is repairing the cables, the fiber optic cables, the internet services, the circuits, the fiber optics, any of the things that feed all of our homes, businesses, schools, etc. If it's broken, we have to go out and fix it. So it's not easy work, but yeah, it's physically demanding. But I do feel better knowing that it's a union job. So but as far as activism goes, I can really only speak to what I've done in my own personal story for things. Personally, it took me a while to realize I was even queer, but it also took me a while to realize that the mold that I was given, that story that we're always told, here, you need to be this kind of person and you will have success, it didn't fit right for me. It took me a while to figure that out, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. Yay! As far as activism goes, I've been pretty active with Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. If you don't know, they're a cross-union, rank-and-file members are part of OWLS. And I felt really accepted there too, with my own identity, just that I'm accepted as a person, and identity doesn't matter so much, and I appreciate that too. But OWLS, I know they've been doing work for over 20 years, but some of the biggest things that they've done most recently would probably be the April 5th rally and picket march to the ICE building down in SeaTac. So this was I'm sure some of you were there too, but it went very well. I was told by people that just came up to me that, hey, this was really well run. This is better organized than other things, which is, I thought that's how they were. But one of the neat things about that was, it's well organized, and it was a forum from all kinds of people throughout SeaTac. We had labor leaders, we had Tori, we had some of the city council members there as well. We even had trans and immigrant youth from the schools in the area whose parents and who themselves can be affected by all these things happening. And we're standing up in support of them, in solidarity. And I believe we had over 1,000 people there on the 5th when there were massive protests downtown, and there were massive protests in Olympia and Tacoma, and just little old SeaTac, 1,000 people. I thought that was impressive. But yeah, I have seen in OWLS a organization that helps spur our labor institutions to take action. OWLS has helped push the King County Labor Council to adopt resolutions in against racism, rooting out racism in King County. They've helped push and suggest language to support Palestine that many unions themselves have adopted at meetings, just from the rank and file accepting it. Because we as workers know what's going on is unjust. And it takes us standing up and saying something about it, that it is unjust, for other people to realize, just to see that they're not alone in this, that seeing that it's wrong, they're not the only ones who see that. But sometimes it takes that courage and strength of one person standing up first.
Yeah.
In my own work life, my queerness hasn't come up so much. Partly it's because we're always pushed with that hurry up from the bosses and productivity. That's actually how I got involved in my union, was we had a lot of productivity quotas coming down and trying to push us to hurry up, and it makes us try to do our work unsafely. It's not good. And in doing that, I was only acting as a steward for working on these things, trying to push a boulder up a hill, but turns out the company found something wrong with their metrics for these things, and they were able to correct things. So there's a new version that's a little bit less harsh. So that's actually my first example of seeing how stuff can be accomplished just from the low level. But yeah, as far as my work goes, I work alongside a lot of the same kinds of people Tori does, the cis white people. I think we have a little bit more diversity in our workplace because we've got a lot of African American and a lot of immigrants as well, just working, doing the same jobs. But there's still a majority white cis male. And I have the advantage that I can kind of pretend to be a cis dude. But it doesn't really matter, and I've talked about this with all kinds of coworkers. What matters is being able to do the job. If you can trust the person next to you to do the same work, to have your back, because we're working in dangerous spaces. So we work aloft, in cherry pickers, we work down in the underground, in the utility holes. These confined spaces are dangerous. So it's more important to be able to trust somebody, and I don't worry about identity there. I just worry, hey, are they going to be able to call somebody if I can't get up? And that is kind of refreshing too, that it's, you're just accepted for, it doesn't matter what your identity is, just who you are. But I also feel like that's where we as a labor movement can work and focus on to make some achievements in this. I've been trying to focus on the little things that I can actually do, because it's so easy to get disheartened and downtrodden when we see all this news that just keeps happening. It just keeps piling up. Like, the metaphor I'm picturing is the ticker tape machine pushing out a bunch of paper and just piling up in a giant pile of terrible news about the stock market. But what we can do is focus personally. Those people that we work alongside with, our friends, our family, these people know who we are, and if we start speaking to these injustices that are affecting us personally, they'll realize that there's somebody that they care about, that they work alongside, who's going to be affected. I think that's the only way that we can really fight against transphobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, is just making these connections, and it's not easy. I think it's me getting a little bit too much organizing training, but just making those connections personally and speaking one-to-one can sometimes have a bigger impact. It takes a lot of work though. It's not going to be easy because every one of those conversations, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. But if we're able to do that, we can lift everyone up. If we can focus on our contracts as well, or I wish I didn't have to think about my contract as a backstop against the slow erosion of rights that all of us are starting to face. It happened with women's rights first, just a couple years ago, but now they're coming for trans people as well. And they're not going to stop. There's no way that you can compromise with somebody whose initial position is, I want you dead. There's no way. It's like, do we compromise? Oh, we only want half of these people gone. It's like that's not a position that we can take. And no matter how much we try to make ourselves squeaky, shiny, clean, and perfect in other people's eyes, just the fact that I'm queer is enough for so many people just to dismiss me outright. That, oh, I don't care about you. You can go to hell, literally. But there's just not a way to take that and work with that. We have to be able to, we have to meet people where they're at, but some people we're not going to be able to reach. That's sad. Yeah. That hurts, especially when it's somebody who's close. But things aren't going to get better on their own. I've been watching that for a while, and I just got to the point where I needed to do something to see about getting my voice heard. And I feel like I can do that a little bit in my union. My peers respect me, and that means a lot. And rebuilding these things isn't going to happen overnight. And it's not something that can only happen at the bargaining table either. That's a great place that we can put in some of these rights, restore them to our union siblings, but that's not where this should end. That's where it should start.
Thanks, Steve. Next, I will welcome up Miro Stuke. Miro is a training specialist, a UW grad student, and a member of United Auto Workers Local 4121. They're also the chair of UAW 4121 Anti-discrimination Working Group. Welcome, Miro.
Hi everyone. It's so lovely to be here. This is such a great space and such great company to be in today. So I'm really happy to share this space. My name is Miro. I use they them pronouns, and I'm a member of UAW Local 4121 out of UW Seattle. And with UAW, I have worked on issue-based organizing campaigns around bodily autonomy and gender-based harassment and discrimination, both with our local's anti-discrimination working group and with our Western States Regional Gender, Civil, and Human Rights Committee. I'm a queer, trans, and non-binary organizer, and I believe that fighting for our rights, whether that's in our workplaces, in the streets, or in the legislature, is part of the same struggle. And I'll say a little bit to my experience of getting involved in my union in terms of leadership and working on these issue-based campaigns is in 2021, actually, our bargaining team passed language in our contract that guaranteed gender-affirming care from any provider, whether they were in-network or out-of-network, would be at the in-network cost. And that's something that I utilize. So that's how I realized I stopped third-partying the union, thinking it's something over here, and thought, oh, this is something I'm part of, and this is for me. And I'm honored to be speaking here with this panel and being in community with such amazing organizers and activists, where we can discuss organizing for trans and LGBTQ plus rights, not as a side issue, but as something that's central to our labor organizing. As you probably can imagine from the news, I mean, as was mentioned, there's a lot of things in the news, but UW and higher education in general, we are facing many challenges right now. We have cuts to funding leading to layoffs. We have many attacks on non-citizen workers in our community. And we have threats on our campus to freedom of speech. And that's among other things. And we have many efforts happening sort of simultaneously around different issues. But I'm going to focus on kind of my realm of experience and given the topic on issues of queer and bodily autonomy. So I think a little bit to what Lauren was saying earlier, in the spirit of Pride, I invite you all to consider Pride not just as like a celebration of how far we have come, but also as an active and ongoing practice of resistance. Pride began as a riot. Pride began as a riot, as many of you know, has already been mentioned, and led by trans women of color and others who were criminalized simply for existing. And this is what we see our political direction heading back towards, right? In fact, the first Pride I attended was in New York City, and it followed the path of the original Pride March that stemmed from the Stonewall Rebellion. So this history to me is at the root of my identity as a queer person and as an organizer. The first Pride was not a celebration of inclusion in systems that oppressed us, but a demand to dismantle and rebuild those systems for everyone. That spirit of resistance must stay with us as we continue to fight for our rights. Pride isn't just about visibility, it's about power. And our power comes from organizing.
That's right. That's right.
The rights we have now and those that we're fighting right now to maintain, we only have because of organizing that happened in the past. And so it's with this spirit of pride and building on the work and efforts of those who came before that we continue to organize. So I'd like to give a few examples of some of the efforts I've been part of where we've attempted to enact this at different levels, and partially to sort of share some of these things we've been working on, and also part of why I'm excited to be here is to generate new ideas. So I am very looking forward to that discussion piece as well. So a couple examples that show how we have worked to empower our coworkers and build solidarity. I'll start a little bit more with my current role at UW. So I'm a PhD candidate at UW. I'm in the School of Environmental and Forest Science, and to support my studies, I've had several roles, both in teaching, leading classes, and doing research over the past 5 years. But my current role is a little different. It's as a training specialist with the EPIC program, and this stands for Empowering Prevention and Inclusive Communities. And this is a training program, and it's special because it's actually something we have won in our contract. And this uses a peer-to-peer education model to equip our members to stand up to discrimination and harassment, to build solidarity with coworkers, to know their contract rights, and to increase competency in organizing. And this is a really great program that builds leaders and advocates across our workplace, and it's funded by our employer. So that's thanks to our wins in environmental. And with the Regional Gender, Human and Civil Rights Committee, we've performed workshops across our region of the Western states, meeting members from many locals that prepare members to organize around bodily autonomy, reproductive justice, gender-affirming care, and the right to exist as ourselves at work. We cover how to include these issues in organizing conversations and how to combat the common misinformation that's being spread. These are skill-building workshops, so they give members an opportunity to practice these conversations and build advocates for trans and reproductive justice. We've also fought and won contract language that protects LGBTQ plus workers, even if we see those federal and state laws regress, kind of like Stephen was speaking to. This includes access to affirming restrooms and protections that go beyond the official or legal definitions of harassment and discrimination, to include things like microaggressions and having the right to a respectful workplace. And these are enforceable in our contract. So we continue to actively try to imagine, propose, and bargain for new language to expand LGBTQ plus rights in the workplace. Because we know if we are able to lift ourselves up in the workplace, that we'll be able to fight for that across our communities as well. So yeah, as many of you probably know, our contract rights on paper don't enforce themselves, so we also have to utilize our grievance procedure to hold our employer accountable to these things. So that's making sure they meet their obligations, whether that's sort of updating facilities, respecting name changes, or gender marker changes, or ensuring that our health insurance plans are covering the gender affirming care that they're supposed to. So in many cases, we also have to use escalating collective action campaigns to support these grievances that our employer, UW, sometimes would rather just disregard. I've also done some work at the city level, so kind of thinking about whether you live where you work or you can commute there from out of town, our power still extends into our communities. So we can build coalitions with our labor siblings and with political groups with shared values. So one example of this that I participated in this year in January was actually in Olympia, where I organized alongside the local Labor Council as well as the DSA to win a Trans Sanctuary City proclamation, which committed city resources to protect trans folks from out-of-state laws in ways that even surpass our state laws. Additional cities in Washington have followed suit, and this showed the strength that labor and community power can have in action together, not just protecting our coworkers, but protecting our whole communities. And with my local, we've also done some actions at the state level. So this spring we met with several state legislators, so we have members that are across districts. Like for example, I'm from Olympia, so we have folks in Vancouver. A lot of people are able to do their programs remotely, so we have folks across the state of Washington. We also have 3 UW campuses that have members. So we spend time visiting offices, attending town halls, showing up at rallies and marches, and mobilizing our members to write their reps to support pro-worker, pro-queer, and pro-reproductive justice legislation. And we turned out our state labor council lobby day and the revenue action day, not just to talk about funding and other workers' rights issues, but also to talk about, like the unemployment benefits for striking workers is one of the things we were working on, but also to defend trans youth and expand gender-affirming healthcare access in the state of Washington, both of which we won this year. We also introduced language to increase access to Plan B in rural areas as well. So we have working on many fronts, and this is sort of as opposed to federally, where we've seen this onslaught of attacks towards trans folks and towards our right to bodily autonomy. So across our region, the western states, we have organized to work against some of these attacks, including HR 28, which would have changed the interpretation of Title IX to allow for discrimination against trans people and set a dangerous precedent. So this would have affected educational environments like University of Washington, but the precedent would have allowed this sort of logic to continue into our other laws. We organized over 100 members to phone bank senators and asked them to stop the bill in the Senate, and we also worked on with unions across the nation to sign on to and deliver a letter with representing over 160,000 workers across industries against HR 28. And thankfully we saw this bill defeated in Senate, where many of the senators we contacted worked in a block to filibuster and kill the bill. We've also fought rule changes outside of the legislature, like the proposed limitations on passport gender marker changes. So we organized a public comment campaign across locals in our region to raise this as a worker issue by restricting required work travel, which as academics, we do a lot of work travel. So I'm in environmental and ecological science, so we might go do field work. This could be anywhere in the world. We have people going to Pacific Islands, we have people going to Arctic climates. And we also travel to conferences to exchange knowledge and increase our collaboration and yeah, just as part of the research we're working on. So this restriction to work travel, as well as issues with getting identity documents like passports and concerns for personal safety while traveling for trans folks, this not only affects the trans folks like myself and my workplace, but also our coworkers if these rule changes impact our ability to do our jobs. So these aren't a niche issue. These are just a labor issue. I hope these examples demonstrate how we can embody the spirit of pride, not just in June, but in bargaining, in ledge session, in our communities, and in our conversations with our coworkers, and in the vision of what the labor movement can be. What we build together and what we fight for at work, in our cities, and in our unions matters. No single campaign is like a training or a piece of contract language will change this tide that we're facing, but together they are a pathway forward. And as queer workers and our allies, we can see past playing defense against these current attacks to the continued fight to build a future where every worker, especially the most marginalized, can show up fully, be safe, be seen, and be powerful at work. Yeah, and I'm really excited again about the idea of exchanging thoughts in the discussion and thinking about what that can look like for us. What can we imagine and fight for, and not just work on the defensive? Can we get healthcare for all? That is a form of bodily autonomy, right? Yeah. We all deserve that. When I think about this, I think about solidarity, right? It's not just solidarity with trans and queer folks. We're talking about our non-citizen coworkers, our BIPOC coworkers, our disabled coworkers. And so we need solidarity, and it's not just a word, it's an action, and it's a continued practice. And I believe it's dreaming bigger than what the boss or the institution or the state says is possible for a future. So thanks for the time, and yeah, if you're interested in any of these specific things or anything else about what's like going on at UW or in higher ed, I'd love to discuss them further. Thank you.
Thank you, Miro. And so now I will welcome our last panelist to give a presentation, Sue Docekal. Sue is a public school office worker and a shop steward with Teamsters Local 763. She's also a member of Radical Women and a national leader in the Freedom Socialist Party and a founding member of the Seattle Pride at Work.
No.
Seattle Pride at Work.
Seattle Pride at Work used to be a thing. Not really.
Oh.
It's there in name only. It
Yeah.
was actually an organization.
Yeah.
And Kathleen, who's here, and I were at the, there she is. We were at the founding, the first few meetings where it got started. It was two nurses from who were working up at the mental health center. What's the name of it? West, yeah. They're the ones who got it started, and anyway, for a while it was the one thing. But organizations come and go. But Pride at Work is still around, and I'll refer to this later. Actually, I wrote a little pamphlet. In 2001, Pride at Work had a national conference here in Seattle, and it was large. And it's called On the Front Lines of Lavender Labor History, the Freedom Socialist Party in Action. I urge people to get a copy. It's, 50 cents. I mean, I think with inflation we should up the price. But anyway, it was quite a large organization and is still happening nationally. But it was one of the places where there was fights over democracy in the organization and whether it was going to buck conservative union leadership or not. And those are still the issues that are happening. So, sorry, I didn't start with myself. My pronouns are she, her, them, and like Tori, I really feel about the same. Come into the world as a woman, but I don't like to be stuck in a box. And I work at Tidy High School in SeaTac, which is just south of Seattle. Well, you know where the airport is. And I'm like a receptionist secretary there, and I've been there for 6 years now, I can't believe it. And I'm a shop steward with Teamsters, which you mentioned. I also work with Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity. So when I was thinking, what do I want to talk about? And I just going, well, who are these queer leaders? And why are they emerging as leaders in many of the recent labor battles? And you know, when you look at it, it's really not rocket science. Because queer workers as a whole are underemployed, underpaid, and discriminated against. So, these are people who need a union and are ready to fight. The industries that hire us, and I looked this up, are, I kind of knew it, but hire us the most are restaurants and food services, hospitals, education, hospitality, and retail. And a lot of the recent major unionization drives and strikes have been in education, healthcare, airlines, hotels, Starbucks, bookstores, and interestingly, museums, which are also a gay stronghold, I found out. So, I looked into some of the stats. Of course, these tend to be jobs on the lower end of the wage scale. And I'm sorry my voice is bad, I'm getting over the crud here. Especially if they're not unionized. Now, overall, more than 1 in 5 LGBTQ plus adults, or 22%, are living in poverty. But this is compared to an estimated 16% of their straight and cisgender counterparts, which that's not great either. Among queer adults, poverty further differs across sexual orientation, gender, and race. Queer unemployment stands at 9%, but for queer African Americans, the figure is 15%, Latinos 14%, and Asian Pacific Islanders 11% unemployment of the queer population. There's also still a lot of workplace discrimination, and they did a study in 2022, found that half of LGBTQI workers reported experiencing some form of discrimination on the job. Another study estimates that 33% of queer employees are in the closet at work still. Still, another research found that 16% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual workers reported losing a job because of their sexuality. But, I'm going to shift. There's some encouraging statistics too. The share of Americans who believe gay or lesbian, quote unquote, this is from the study, gay or lesbian relations between consenting adults should be legal, has soared from 32% in 1986 to 79% today. And parallel to this good news is the rise in the approval rate of unions, which stood at 58% approval in 1985 and was 71% in 2022. So, Trump be damned, we are making headway. The demographics in the queer community are also changing, I discovered. I looked into, it was called the Williams Institute and Gallup Poll Research and Polling. And in 2024, 9.3% of adult Americans identified as LGBTQ. And this is a big increase from not that long ago. And the increase, it turns out, is largely driven by younger adults, particularly those aged 18 to 29. Also, you'd be interested to know 42% of queer adults identify as people of color. That's a higher percentage than the overall population, but that too is driven by age, as the younger generations keep getting less and less white. And the most surprising stat of all to me was that there's a huge gender gap in young queer identity. More young women than men identify as queer in 2015. The numbers were 10% for women, 6% for young men. But last year, the number of young women identifying as queer was 31%. And most of that category is consider themselves bisexual. Now, young men also increased, but only to 12%. There's a big gap. And I read these studies and they were like, why is this? Why is this? Why could this be? Oh, maybe it has to do with Twitter and TikTok and all these weird things. It's feminism. Good grief. And these statistics, while I was a little surprised by them, at the same time, I do work in a high school, so I would say these trends don't really shock me from what I see every day. So, so much for my geeky deep dive there, but it's interesting. So these are really weird times. We have this pro-union, diverse, young, queer, progressive force emerging. At the same time, we have the Trump administration, hand in hand with Musk, the Heritage Foundation, and their corporate funders, who are attacking trans, queer, and union rights like we've never seen before. Now, I'm old enough that I've lived through a lot of horrible presidents. But now the potential of fascism is more imminent than I have ever seen in my lifetime. And with their broad racist right-wing agenda versus immigrants and women's rights combined with an all-out assault on the First Amendment rights and the police state tactics that they're taking, it is getting scary. And I think we have no time to lose. We got to meet their shock and awe campaign with resistance. And after a little period of stunned silence right after he got elected, I do feel like the fight back is building now. Oh, 1 week ago, 70,000 people marched in Seattle. It was great, and it was inspiring. The question is, though, what's next? We can't do that every week. So, I'd like to throw out some ideas for strategies going forward that we can talk about in discussion. 3 top ones are general strikes, united front, and working class independent political action. I think these are all strategies we need. And I think that LGBTQ unionists and organizers have an impressive track record already on these issues and an important future role to play in all of them. As for a general strike, I do not think there's, I think we all know, there's really nothing else that's going to stop Trump and company. That is our biggest power, is to shut it down.
That's right.
Now, there is a flyer back there I urge people to read too. Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity decided to do kind of an education campaign, because you can't just say, oh, Monday, let's have a general strike. It's going to take a little bit of education and work. So ALS is really trying to do a campaign of education around that. Building united fronts against fascism. Well, there, I think we have lessons from Germany, but we also have some homegrown lessons here. The United Front needs labor leadership. And that can give it a level of organization, power, and discipline that's needed to win. Now, United Front, the idea isn't that everyone agrees on everything. In fact, the whole idea is to get people together, to bring us all together to be stronger. The concept is to bring different slogans, banners, political views, but strike as one. Whether that be through protests, strikes, or mutual defense. And that could be legal mutual defense, it could be physical, when the right-wing thugs attacked. And I think left cooperation is key, because a lot of the movers and shakers and unions and community organizations are radicals, and we radicals really need to set an example of how to cooperate and work together. And in terms of different ways of approaching the United Front, I do think Steve talked about the April 5th demonstration that Owls initiated, and then I also went to the one, I think it was May 24th, against the Holy Rollers at Cal Anderson Park. And so, like the April 5th one in SeaTac, you know, I think it was also important because it was like the first labor-led thing that wasn't a specific workplace issue. It was bringing in a lot of issues, you know, like funding for schools, defense of immigrant and trans kids, and defense of public workers. I think it was important that organizing for that, there were planning meetings, and union reps, mutual aid activists, and socialists, many of whom never worked together before, collaborated to organize really impressive security that did not rely on the police. And it was awesome that the Proud Boys, who had threatened to come and in fact are based in that neighborhood, just, well, Auburn, and Des Moines, didn't show their faces. But the big immigrant community in that neighborhood did turn out and hollered and cheered and got out of their cars and honked. And one of my very favorite things that happened that day was when I saw our big, burly woodshop teacher at my school. He brought his whole family, all of whom are union members, including his trans daughter, and he carried this enormous trans flag that he had crafted. Now, I want to say on the May 24th thing at Cal Anderson, the protest against the right wing there, it was exciting. It was great that the community turned out in numbers with little notice. The energy was there to fight back, but honestly, a coordinated leadership was missing. And that gave the cops the opening to go after Black Bloc protesters and in the process arrest and pepper spray numerous bystanders.
Speak into the mic.
Okay. I will be upfront and tell you, I do not believe the Black Bloc strategy works. I've seen it tried all the way from 2007 up until January 6th of 2021. What happened, honestly, is over and over, the Proud Boys trained in the streets of Seattle, Portland, and Greensboro. The Seattle and Portland police let them beat up protesters over and over, and then they gassed our side when it was all over with. It often degenerated into street skirmishes that did not mobilize the community and scared people away. See, I think that's why April 5th to me is a model of how we can organize in labor to unite the community and embolden them, not scare them. And now we need to take that concept bigger and broader. Okay, strategy number 3, Labor Party pastime. The Democrats are in crash and burn mode. Now, I don't think they've ever been a party for workers and the oppressed, but now when the fight is on, they have truly gone belly up. And it's time we had a party based in the unions and the working class. Not a labor party like they have in England that's all bought up, an actual working class party. I was excited to learn that just this last week, the national leaders of the American Federation of Teachers and American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees both resigned from the Democratic National Committee. and file union members are way beyond that. We're ready to get out of this two-party straitjacket. In my local, right before the elections, they did a straw poll for what presidential candidate you supported, and the winner of the vote was none of the above. I think people are ready. And all these strategies, whether the United Front's forming a labor party, building for general strikes, they really flow together. But labor's got to be a backbone of it. And this pamphlet that I wrote, Pride at Work, that I mentioned, I talked about some of that in there, and I said to quote myself, to realize this possibility, the rank and file needs to create democratic fighting unions. Worker radicals who have the courage to get out front and stay there, to voice their ideas and cling to their principles, can be the agents of social transformation in the unions, while resisting the pull to become careerists and tokens. The queerest among us, used to standing alone when necessary, but eager to build alliances whenever opportunity arises, have the strength of character and backbone to show how it's done, unquote. And today, our union siblings and even a number of labor leaders, I think, are realizing that if we don't switch gears now and start fighting, the labor movement is going to just go up in smoke. I see this change happening in my Teamster Local. We passed a mutual defense resolution, basically for United Fronts, that the wording was developed by OWLs, and we took it to our union. It passed overwhelmingly, and there was a guy who tried to make an amendment to the resolution that would have weakened it and dropped mention of queers. And that amendment was unanimously defeated, and the motion was adopted. That and the Palestine resolution that our local passed, I think, shocked our own union leadership, and they've gotten braver ever since. The local endorsed and donated money to that April 5th protest. And at our last union meeting, AMR drivers who, I should have guessed, but I didn't know, we're almost all queer, came en masse to say they were prepared to strike over AI cameras spying on them all day in the ambulances. And now our local is sending myself and 3 other queer members to a national Teamsters caucus meeting in Minneapolis over Pride weekend. And 3 of us from our local are here. See? The local leaders. What's the coolest thing? I told somebody here already, but they had to do a second run because they weren't sure they'd be popular, but all the straight members wanted them. They said, well, we want them too. So at these times, just end with, they're dangerous and they're urgent, but folks are waking up fast. You know, we heard about the bombing thing at the beginning of the program, and these crooks, as they're recklessly leading us into world war, I think the need for revolutionary change is becoming more and more obvious. I urge everyone to meet each other. Like you said, let's get some ideas going and work together. Read your history, join an organization. There's a lot of flyers and people to meet and talk to here. Any of the organizations I belong to or that they belong to. Join something. And have a seditious and happy Pride. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you to all of our panelists. We are going to... I'll now invite Lena up. Lena is a member of Radical Women, the Comrades of Color Caucus of Radical Women and FSP, and an aerospace engineer. Lena, I will welcome you up here to talk about our fundraiser.
Hi. I hope you enjoyed those speakers as much as I did. Maybe it mended your soul a little after we had the fascists in town recently. You know, with their strange gender binary flags, awful music, and horrible dancing. But it was amazing though how many people came out, right, to oppose them. I was glad to be there with RW and FSB. Okay, but tonight I'm here for the Freedom Socialist newspaper fund drive. Which means I'm here to take your donations. We have made it really easy to collect your donations. You can use credit card, Venmo, cash, check, or just add it to your tab. There are some lovely people walking around with baskets, or maybe just one person. Two people. There are lovely people walking around with baskets. In the basket, you'll find slips of paper and some pens. You just have to fill it out. Very simple, very easy. Now, why should we donate to the FS? Why? Good question. It is truly a paper for the working class. This socialist feminist publication is not for profit. It is written to spread the word because we need to keep ourselves informed in preparation for revolution, right? Right. Okay, so for those who have not read it, I'm going to tell you my favorite things about the newspaper. And for those who have read it, you're just going to sit there and confirm that I'm not making things up. Okay?
We'll be your fact checker.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. If you're looking for well-researched articles with facts and figures to confirm things, this is your paper. If you're looking for history or a connection to the present, they got it. And if you want articles that prominently features voices of color, not on the back page, right? Not as a token piece, but for real, this is your paper. The struggle for LGBT liberation has always been front and center as well. And if you're looking for international coverage to learn about the struggles and successes of workers all over the globe, this is your paper. It focuses on our collective humanity, right? It transcends these fake militarized borders that the imperialists have made up, right, to keep us apart. You will not find, I promise you will not find sensationalized nationalism. That doesn't exist here. I call that fake pride. We only have real pride. So let me tell you, the authors are not worried about offending anyone. They write it like it is. The genocide of the Palestinian people, they call it a genocide. It's not the Israel-Hamas war or whatever it is, how the papers write. And while there are many problems that plague us, the newspaper is not all doom and gloom. There are socialist feminist solutions that are offered in the reporting. And they do not leave out the most oppressed of us. It talks about them leading the fight. And as you all know, we now live in the book banning era. They're trying to erase LGBTQIA history, women's history, black history, indigenous history from museums and even the national parks. So now, more than ever, we need independent journalism to keep us inspired, keep us on our toes and ready to act.
That's right.
I am certainly feeling motivated to donate.
Yay!
And I hope you all are too. So let's keep the paper going. Anything you can give helps. 100, 50, 25, 5, or even $1. Because printing and shipping the newspaper is twice as expensive as it was 10 years ago. Your money won't be wasted. Every dollar will go to keeping the lights on and the presses rolling as this revolutionary grassroots publication keeps going, right? And once again, super simple, credit card, Venmo, cash, check, add it to your tab. You fill out the slips of paper and you can pay on your way out at the finance desk. Okay, we may not have the money that Jeff, Elon, Orange Taco, or any of those other crazy fascists, right? They got rich from exploiting others. But we have people power.
That's right.
We don't need them. We don't need corporate funding. We sustain ourselves. We keep ourselves educated and engaged. So let's do this. Thank you for your donations.
Thank you, Lena. And now, also, I want to thank our LA folks who have been joining us on live stream. We are going to transition into the discussion portion of our evening. So thank you to our LA team, or our LA comrades who are going to be transitioning to their discussion too.